thing. So to begin, a bit of an intro for who we are. I know there's a few people on the call who I've met before, so it's great to see you all here. So for some new faces, my name is Luca Caruso. I'm the Business Applications Practice Manager at SOCO. I've been working with Microsoft technologies for a decade plus. I've seen quite a lot of iterations from on-prem to cloud, and now the next big shift, which is hyper-automation and AI. I've got Raylene with me here today.
Thanks, Luca. Yes, I'm Raylene Biddles. I'm the Principal Consultant for the Modern Workplace in M365. I've been at SOCO for a few months now, so I came back at the end of last year. And my particular focus, I work in the modern workplace across SharePoint, but my particular focus is around information management, compliance and governance, which has a direct correlation to Copilot, as most of you will know, or if you don't know, obviously your information architecture, Copilot runs over your information. So really important around and how the information's governed and structured. So I'm going to be talking a lot more around getting prepared for Copilot to roll out and providing you with some tips and strategies around, I guess, reducing the risk of sort of overexposure or oversharing of your information through that process.
Okay, thanks, Raylene. And for those who don't know much about SOCO, we are an IT implementation provider. We do specialize in implementing solutions built on the Microsoft stack. If it's not obvious from our backgrounds, we do come from quite a strong and deep Microsoft background. And we have been working with Microsoft on a lot of their journeys for many years now. So we'll get underway. The first topic we're going to look at as part of today's event is really understanding Copilot's features, how it can support your organization, but also how you can get more productivity out of the product stack. Now, before we get into Copilot as a specific product, it's always good to look at the state of the industry overall. Now, Microsoft will run a yearly survey on the state of work. So the most up-to-date version of this is from last year, so from 2024. And of course, the topic was AI. It's really been pivotal, and it's been a massive shift over the past couple of years. So we're going to spend a little bit of time looking through this. AI at work is here. Now comes the hard part. And really, the hard part is defined pretty quickly up front. So we can see 68% of people surveyed, they found that they're struggling with the volume and the pace of the work that they're doing. So if you look in your organization, that's 2/3 of people are starting to struggle with how much work is being presented them. We really are facing that pivotal shift where customers are expecting more, but also the workloads are getting more complicated. So the solution is simple, right? Let's hire more people. Well, you can see technical leaders are having the inverse concern. 61% of those are really worried about getting enough talent. So we can see work is getting more complex, the volume is getting greater, but also over half of managers are really struggling to find that talent. And this is where people are turning to AI. So it's interesting to know that 75% of people who were surveyed are already using AI, and 46% of those surveys started less than 6 months ago. So people are moving to AI very quickly, and they're moving there in a very fast way. So what do we mean by that? Well, there is an opportunity here for this group of people. The AI revolution is here, whether the organizations who are rolling it out are ready or not. And we come into the concept of a bring your own AI, which is what we're seeing a lot in the industry. Now, bring your own AI, a lot of people are saying that this is only for Gen Z, so for the younger part of the workforce, they're the ones who are bringing these third-party AIs into the workplace. Well, we can see that that's not the case here. Yes, there is a large portion of the younger generation, both Gen Z and millennials, who are bringing their own AIs into the workplace. But in particular, Gen X and boomers are also using third-party AIs as part of their approach to dealing with their work volume. Now, this is where a risk for organizations can lie. by not having control of the information that has been put in these systems, we do run the risk of opening this up to a way that is uncontrolled and information leaking out of the organization that really shouldn't. So where there is a risk, there is also an opportunity. And with this opportunity, there is a key group of people who have been identified in the usage of AI at work. Now, it's broken into 4 groups here. So the skeptics, these are people who are rarely using AI at all and can be considered quite resistant to the change for rolling out. The novices, they're happy to experiment, but they're not going to be leaders in adopting this in the organization. The explorers, on the other hand, are happy to explore, they're happy to try a few new things. And then you've got the power users. Well, these are the ones who are really leading the charge to bring AI into the workplace. And you can see some of the areas that this has been used by these survey respondents. Now, it's interesting to break this section down. The reason for that is when you are looking for your AI rollout, when you're looking for the group of users you want to be engaging, you want a good cross-section across this entire group. You don't just want your power users who are the thought leaders in this space. Rather, you want some skeptics, some novices, and some explorers to really get a good breadth of understanding within your organization. And Raylene will cover this off in today's presentation in a bit more detail about what the right strategies are for rolling AI out in your organization. So we've talked a lot about AI as a concept, but of course we've got the particular product that we know a lot of people are using already, but also that's getting rolled out quite heavily, quite quickly by Microsoft, and that is Copilot. Now, the core premise of Copilot is built around the Copilot chat. So this is where, for people who have used ChatGPT or another AI service like that, Copilot chat is going to be very similar. You're interacting with a large language model in a verbal chat style interface. Now, the benefits of Copilot really go beyond just the chat, because in addition to that, it's powered, or it does power agents within your organization. Now, for those who haven't heard the term agents, it is a term that is picking up pace in the industry, but think of it as the next level of automation. It is a program that's powered by Copilot, but is also powered by automation tools like Power Automate, if you've heard of that, to get jobs done that may have needed manual intervention previously. So you've got your chat, you've got your agents to get to your hyper automation, and then your IT controls that sit on top of that. And this is where we do want these controls in place. You want to get a good 360 view of what is happening in the organization, especially with where your data is going. And Copilot, it doesn't just have to be relating to the one chat interface. So we're seeing a lot of people talking about the chat interface there, but there are Copilots that have started to disperse throughout all of the different apps that Microsoft offers. So whether it is your M365 applications, summarizing emails in Outlook, summarizing meetings in Teams, or getting sales insights from your CRM. Copilot as a principle is grounded in your business data, but it is in the applications that you're using every day. And this is the one Copilot that's always going to be powered and secured within your own business data. And this is where the concept of the enterprise grade AI is really coming in. Rather than having just a standard AI that's fed by the open large language model, Copilot, it knows your business and it knows you, and it's secured within your tenant, just like any other Microsoft product would be. And this is the key differentiator by deploying Copilot rather than, let's say, ChatGPT. Because what you're getting is that secured interface. You're getting the business context that only Microsoft can provide, but then you're then getting the integration with all of the other apps and processes that you're running already on a day-to-day basis. And then for those with an IT manager hat on, you've then got the controls you can put in place to really make sure that you're getting the best, but also getting the security that you need from your AI. So a couple of key offerings that Microsoft have here. The first is Copilot Studio. Now, seeing a lot of interest in this product from our customers, but also from the market in general. Rather than just use the Copilot that's provided by Microsoft, you can now go and build your own that creates a specific task that you need it to do. So whether you need an agent that can summarize HR information on your intranet, or you need an agent to go through and post to your website so you can have a chat with the large language model. You use Copilot Studio to go and build out those agents using a low-code approach, similar to how a lot of people have used Power Apps or Power Automate before. And this is where we extend into Copilot in Power Apps. So we all know Power Apps is a low-code application interface. Well, we're now looking at the next step of that low-code, which really is using natural language to build an app. So you don't need much knowledge here to get started. You can use that natural language, build an app that meets your business need, of course, still grounded in your own data with your security baked in. And the same is true of Copilot in Power Automate. Hyper-automation, automation of repetitive tasks. This is something that has been in the industry for many years now. Power Automate has really been at the forefront of doing this. And then coupling that with Copilot does unlock the ability to start hyper-automating a lot of business processes, which means you can then redeploy staff doing those jobs to have more high value, higher impact day-to-day functions. And this is where we get into some of these automation tasks. So a lot of people have the question, I've got Copilot, what's the first thing I do now? What's my first interaction with this application? Well, really, one of the biggest things that people are seeing benefits of is that repetitive task, using Copilot to get through and do that automatically for them. So for example, recapping a meeting. All in meetings, we're taking notes, we're not able to be fully engaged in that call. With Copilot and transcription turned on in Teams, well, you've got an agent doing that for you. You've got your notes being taken, but also you're getting an AI summary at the end of it. We're seeing AI in use within your business to define a function that previously may not have got the full attention that it needed. Summarizing and drafting emails. You can use Copilot as a way to go through and look at your calendar. If you've had a meeting in the morning and you've missed some emails, you can ask Copilot to go through and summarize those emails, but particularly you can ask it where the priorities are. So you know how to start making decisions based on some of that information. And you can see a few other options there, really to start getting an idea of the abilities of this product. So just in summary, there is an opportunity here. There's an opportunity to start rolling AI out, but also to roll it out in a way that can be managed in the long term, get the most for the organization while keeping the security lens on top. You can see the term digital debt here is costing innovation. So some people may not know what digital debt is. It really is the accumulation of, let's say, incompleted or unresolved tasks that get started and we don't have time to finish them in terms of rolling applications out. We want to move away from that. We want to move away to a point where the applications are getting rolled out. People have time to get their work done, but also they have time to focus on their higher value items. Now really is the time to start rolling that out. As we can see, people are bringing AIs already into the workplace. We want to make sure that we're doing that in a very managed way and really getting the most of that opportunity. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to hand over to Ray Loon, who's going to go start through some actual practical tips of how to roll AI out.
Yeah, thank you, Luca. So in terms of, I guess I'm going to be talking through some strategies and some tips. So there's two components to what I'm going to present. So we're going to talk about adoption. We're also going to take a lens, as Luca mentioned, around some of the tools that you can leverage to monitor and control and provide that sort of secure lens through the process as we all start to, I guess, become familiar with AI and in particular with Copilot. There is that awareness out there that there is a lot of fear across, which I'm sure most of you are having those conversations internally within your organisations and looking at, you know, how you're going to go about this in what we would say is an ethical way and how can we harness the benefits of AI, whilst also sort of staying aligned with some of those ethical and industry standards, and in particular making sure that we're doing it safely. And I think one of the things for me, which little side note about me, is I actually am part of aviation, so to speak. So I do fly, and I fly a paraglider. So there's elements of risk that come with that, and I might talk a little bit to that as we go through this presentation, and a lot more about that in Perth. However, the term Copilot really is about, having that assistant. If you think about that, and, something that you can utilise to help to align your thinking internally in your organisation, perhaps when you're looking at this rollout, is really that notion of a Copilot. Most of us are familiar with airlines or catching a commercial flight. Typically, there's a pilot, which is you as the user, and then there is a Copilot. And just sort of looking at some of those ways where we can quickly leverage Copilot is just thinking about it as an assistant, and being alongside you as you do your work is a really good way to start. With that said, there are some sort of best practice approaches to, or essentials for Copilot success. And I'm going to be looking at these three key areas that are up here on the screen now. Some of these are very much similar and will resonate and align with any other system rollout that you may have been part of in the past. They're fairly practical approaches to getting Copilot success, and they're things that you will be familiar with. However, there are some things that I guess in terms of the order of which we may look to undertake this that are really critical to getting things right. So in terms of the Copilot implementation, most organisations will be where the little journey marker is there in purple, where it says that you're here. And as per most other or any other system, we need to have that sort of readiness before we get started. And that's very much around having that sponsorship, which I'll talk to around from the executive perspective, looking at some scenarios, and also security. So these are known as the three S's in Copilot. So having a sponsor, where we've got somebody from the C-suite level, we've got scenarios. So this is very much talking about looking at your business processes and determining how AI, or Copilot in particular, can fit within that scenario, which then translates to more of a use case. And then sitting underneath all of that, of course, is security, and making sure that when we're leveraging tools like AI, we're doing it in a way that we're keeping our information secure. Most importantly, though, on the right-hand side, something that's slightly different to what we've potentially done over many years of implementing systems is the technical readiness and the human change elements really need to be running alongside of each other. Often we will look to get the technical readiness completed before we start to bring users on board, where we have that human change. Sorry, there's just a bit of noise coming through.
Yeah.
Thank you. So these two streams here, human change and technical readiness, it's most important to have those running alongside of each other. So what we're saying there is not to wait for that technical readiness to be established before we start with the human change element. Copilot is very much a human experience. There's a large component of this is change and adoption, and less on the technical side. Anybody that has potentially sort of looked at implementation, you'll see that there's not a lot to do to get started, whereas the change and adoption is really where you're going to drive the most value. In the middle there, we've got some work streams that support that to deliver maximum value. And it's really about those sort of 4 areas where we're getting ready, we're onboarding and engaging people, then we're looking at how we deliver impact, and then ultimately extend and optimize. So if we think about some of the content that Luca presented there around those top 10 prompts, but also then looking at things like the Copilot Studio and Power Automate. Those are more in that extend and optimize phase, where is the run before you, walk before you run type approach. So in terms of sponsorship and governance, On the left here, we have the sponsor role. So we're really looking at getting somebody from the executive or the C-suite there, but these ABCs are really important. So it's not about just having somebody that puts their name to the sponsor role. This is about having somebody that's active, visible, and actually consistently participating in AI use and AI governance and council, having that C-suite executive actually working with the rest of the executive team in what we would call like a coalition. So getting those executive peers on board as well, and then communicating directly to employees about the change. So these are seen as being the most critical to having that sponsorship role. And then running alongside that, the best practice is the establishment of an AI council. And you can see there that there's membership from different areas of the business, and perhaps slightly different to what we may have seen with other system implementations, where we're seeing the inclusion of risk management as part of that council, and also having that change management team there. And this is really around making sure that when the AI Council is actually looking at the adoption and uptake, we're not just looking at it with a single lens of looking at, I guess, whether it's delivering value. We're actually also assessing through that process and through the AI Council the outputs from Copilot or AI, so that we're doing that continuous improvement process as we go through the implementation. Clarity and prioritization. So this is specifically talking about understanding or asking questions from within the business. So we've got 5 areas there that typically we would focus on in gaining clarity. So this is really, really important for a successful Copilot rollout, is actually having clarity around what it is that we're wanting to achieve across different areas of the business. So for example, from an organizational and cultural perspective, it's getting clarity around, do we have the support that we need? Does our operating model enable the use of AI adoption? And I'll talk a little bit more when we go into the tips and strategies of the types of things that will support that type of model. Also taking into consideration business strategies. So it's really, really important to understand what business outcomes we're hoping to be driving with AI, and how AI can help those help to achieve those outcomes. So again, getting clarity around, particularly with something like Copilot, where, you know, it is quite exciting. It's easy to make it available to end users, but we really want to understand what from our business strategy are we enabling, and are we going to achieve those outcomes? Having an applied AI experience. This is really around the people within your organisation, and particularly looking at collaboration. Collaboration and AI use can go hand in hand. So making sure that we've got the collaboration happening within the business to talk about the experiences of Copilot. Having worked with a number of organisations rolling out Copilot, what was really, really important was people talking to each other about their experiences, and helping to understand prompting and expectations, and providing, I guess, a level of a comfort, or, you know, belonging in what would be a little bit of a community. So really getting that established, and is your organisation building on the experience, which again relates back to reviewing the outputs from Copilot. And we're going to talk about how you can actually get insight to that information easily, so as to be able to do those reviews. We've got governance, that's always part of any system rollout. And this is really around the processes and controls, and having transparency around AI usage, which again, I'll talk to when we look at how we can use some of the tools within Microsoft Purview, for example, to provide us that assistance in doing that. And then finally there around technology strategy. And I think what's really important to hone in on technology strategy, if we've got any information managers in the room as well, or in the webinar, shout out to you guys. Information management strategies or technology strategies. So when we talk about infrastructure, infrastructure being your information repositories and the information that Copilot's going to be leveraging in order to provide the value that you're seeking through those business strategies and through those experiences is really, really important. And we talk about that from the perspective of having things in order to then put Copilot across, but also making sure that we're continuously monitoring those repositories, making sure that the information's current so as that the information that's coming back from AI is also accurate and current. And then across the bottom there, these are to give you some understanding of, and your area of business that you're in or industry that you're working in may slightly differ from this, but these are some examples along the bottom here of those scenarios that I talked about. These are giving you some ideas that you could potentially get started quickly in terms of identifying scenarios. But the identification of scenarios and mapping those to personas and prioritizing what's important for your organization in terms of, you know, how can we leverage AI is critically important, particularly because you're going to have competing priorities as you do with a number of other business systems and processes. And it's really important to get some clarity around what is a priority for your organization so that you can focus that through your adoption and uptake and rollout to be leveraging value quickly from Copilot. So in terms of driving human change with best practice, so you can see here, this graph is really showing us that if we look to, and again, this isn't new information, particularly from a rollout of a technology system, but what we're looking at here is sort of showing the difference between having that change management in place or that user adoption, identified scenarios and prioritization, ensuring, for example, that we at least have those 10 basic prompts that Luca showed earlier. We've trained people on how to leverage those quickly, and we're supporting those through that change. Based on having the adoption and change piece together, is 7 times more likely to meet or exceed those project objectives. Moving on, so again, this is not new information. However, with Copilot, what has been found is that looking at role-specific or multi-step prompts at the departmental and even licensing, best practice recommendations around licensing is to look at allocating seats at a departmental level. And the reason for that is tied back to developing that collaboration and community around the use of AI and having business units or groups of people that are starting on the same platform. So you can see here there is a value stream, if you like, within the pyramid. So if we look at that individual value, this is where potentially you're inspiring quick wins. So that's doing things like meeting summaries or, you know, doing quick videos that teach people how to summarize an email using Copilot and Outlook. It's the type of stuff that's going to add value to an individual on a daily basis and can be leveraging that to create some efficiencies, which will then typically transpire into efficiencies at the next level across the department. The departmental area in area 2, if there is some maturity in that space, is really around that role specific type stuff. So if we've got a sales team and we have specific personas or use cases from a sales team perspective, it's about getting those in place to sort of extend that usage on a more broader scale than an individual within Outlook, for example. And then ultimately we're looking to get up to level 3 there, where we're sort of extending those line of business systems. We're creating agents, we're creating automation, and we're starting to see things progress on a more mature scale. I touched on this through the conversation. So analysis of Copilot usage is invaluable. It is a must to have in place as part of deploying Copilot. So you can see here I've got some imagery around the Copilot dashboard and also some of the readiness and usage reporting that's available within Microsoft 365. Having access to this information through adoption and change and for your governance is extremely important. So we can get, not only are we going to get insights through analysis of usage around how the tools are being used, this can also help to inform the use cases and the prioritization that you're looking at around developing those scenarios, because you're able to see what people are actually doing and how they're using Copilot to then perform an analysis and perhaps look at training opportunities, perhaps look at reprioritization of some of those scenarios that you've identified in order to leverage what's actually happening through Copilot usage. So there are some tools, dashboards. I'm going to talk a little bit more about those when we get into talking about the tips and the strategies for rolling out. But I can't emphasize enough the importance of analysis of usage due to how much it will inform the journey for you going forward to mature in the space of rolling out Copilot or leveraging it on a greater scale. So in terms of an implementation overview, I've used this slide really just as a precursor to start to talk about some of the technical readiness that we need to look at, or how we can become technically ready, which is more of what I'm going to cover in the tips that I have put together for you. We've also got a couple of checklists, which you'll see as part of that invitation, that you can get access to a little bit later. However, the four paradigms that we have here, or the four verticals that we have here, are the standard best practice approach to rolling out Copilot from Microsoft 365. And you can see that as we move through those from a human change or a change in adoption process, there's also a number of technical readiness work streams that we can move through and mature as we go through that rollout. What's important is establishing a baseline before you get started, which is what I'm going to talk to now, is some of the tips that you can leverage to strengthen your governance and compliance and system administration. I do want to say from the outset that as Microsoft works in terms of security and the Microsoft Graph, the same principles apply to Copilot. So if somebody is getting information via Copilot, they do have access and permissions to that information. It's not going to create loopholes or create a circumstance where information is being leaked through not having access, or a security breach, for example. So when I talk about the governance and compliance and system administration, this is around making sure that we're doing all that we possibly can ethically to ensure that our information is protected, whilst actually leveraging that efficiency at the same time. So now I'm going to go into pilot mode a little bit. So essentially, when I talk about establishing a baseline, I liken this to a pre-flight check. So when I'm going to jump off a cliff at 650 metres above sea level, I like to make sure that there's certain things in place before I do that. So I like to make sure that things are done up correctly, and that when I do jump off the cliff, I've got as much safety in place as I can. So again, mitigating some risk before I actually do that. So if you can think about this establishment of a baseline, this isn't about actually taking flight. This is about making sure that we've got some protections in place before we go ahead and roll out. So one of the first things around that sort of governance pillar that could be a first activity to get started within your organisation is updating your acceptable use policy to include the use of AI. And that's just making sure that we're establishing that sort of baseline position around policy. We're having that familiarisation through the committee that we're establishing, and we've got that executive buy-in. And then on the right-hand side here, data security posture management for AI is something that's available within the Microsoft Purview suite of tools that you can access and put some things in place before you get started. One of the key things that we like to have in place before we roll out Microsoft Copilot is to make sure that we've got the audit enabled through Microsoft Purview and that we are also retaining audit logs. This is going to allow us to go back and leverage those audit logs around Copilot usage. So for example, something that we can take away from that from a baseline is we're going to get an indication of who within the organisation is using it and how frequently. That can be something that's just a baseline statistic that we have from that. We can then move into putting some protections in place. So in terms of protection, there are some capabilities within Microsoft Purview where we can look to detect any risky user activity that we might see as we get started with Copilot rollout. There's lots of stories that sort of float around, rolling out Copilot and people, prompting Copilot to find out information around salaries or, people within the organisation. Sensitive information protection is something that we can put in place easily without impact to the broader business to make sure that if we do have any sensitive data, so if we are carrying any PII, we've got some protections in place before we run Copilot over that. And then lastly there's some insights that we can leverage as well. So insights enables us to discover that sensitive data that we have within our environment and just making sure that we're checking on any user interactions with other AI apps, which is also another insight that we can leverage before we go into that rollout of Copilot. So this is what I call establishing a baseline. It's putting in place some policy and having some basic protections and data capture before we move into rolling out the tool. It gives us some insights into where we may have some risk mitigation that we need to apply before rolling out. But most of all, it's making sure that we've got a base level of protection before we get started. And then in terms of moving on, I guess, into actually rolling out, we can strengthen those data and security controls as we're rolling out and going through our Copilot pilots, if you like, and getting started with making Copilot available to users. So one of the first things, or one of the biggest risks, or where one of the biggest loopholes lies across organisations in general, is within the SharePoint Online environment and sharing capabilities. So this is talking about sharing links. So how are your users actually sharing information from one SharePoint site, Microsoft Teams or OneDrive, to other users within the business? Sharing links can enable Copilot to have access to information that perhaps, for example, may sort of have been revoked at a period in time. And if we haven't had those administrative activities taking place in the SharePoint environment, we want to understand where those potential risks lies. So that first quadrant there is around leveraging some standard reports from SharePoint Online and from Microsoft Purview that will give us the information around how our information is being shared, but also looking at the settings and controls that we have at the tenant level and making sure that those link settings are set at a level that's going to apply some protection. The second quadrant there is associated to SharePoint Advanced Management. So if you are licensed for that, you can leverage SharePoint Advanced Management. This is going to give you the ability to identify unused or potentially overshared sites. And if you remember me mentioning earlier, the information architecture to which Copilot is applied is critical in terms of the accuracy of the results that you get, particularly where you may not have been undertaking retention and disposition processes or SharePoint site cleanup. This is where, for example, you can have information that's out of date that will be presented in a response from Copilot. And we don't want to be then perhaps translating that information into a board report or a document that's going to be going external, for example. So making sure that unused sites and sites that are potentially overshared, this is about taking proactive measures and making sure that our data is secure and accurate for AI usage. Prevention. So this is surrounding protecting that sensitive data again. So this is very much related to looking at using some of the tools within the Purview platform to categorize our information based on a level of sensitivity, because Copilot will take into consideration, for example, a sensitivity label that is marking content as highly sensitive can be discluded from Copilot or AI access, and therefore making sure that information that is sensitive is not going to be, again, presented or utilised and dispersed through other content that we might be creating. And then finally there we have our discovery component. This one's really around, again, leveraging tools that to discover the content used and shared in the Copilot interactions. So there is a suite of tools available where we can actually be reviewing. Again, reviewing is extremely important, to be going back and reviewing what information is being shared so that we can run through the process again of performing that analysis and making sure that our governance and our policies and our approach to managing AI ongoing is ensuring that our information is protected. We're just about at time. So I guess just to sum up around to summarise my tips or strategies for rollout, my tip is to get started as soon as you possibly can with a pilot group to start to get a feel for AI, to start to leverage it within your organisation. Have some very clear direction around the use scenarios that you're planning to implement, but what value they're going to deliver to your business. And at a very minimum, to establish a baseline of protection to ensure that your organisation's data is protected and secure, but also providing value back to your business. And then finally, continuous improvement and continuous monitoring of the information environment, from my perspective, is the most important element to have in place to ensure that you're leveraging value, you're getting accuracy, you're driving forward, but your information assets, your most valuable assets, are protected through that process. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Raylene. All right, so we have allowed a little bit of time at the end here for a Q&A. Now, we have had some questions pre-sent to us, but what we wanted to do was essentially open up to the floor. We run through a lot of information around the state of AI, what companies are reporting back as part of these surveys, how Copilot can fit in and how you can roll it out. Has any of that triggered any questions that people want to ask now, that you just want us to dive a little bit more deeper into those? And I can't see the chat, so if there is anything in there, if someone can just let me know what that is, we're happy to answer it. We're not on mute again, are we?
You did hear it.
Perfect. Look, let's run through a couple of the questions that we have got ahead of time. So essentially, the first one here is around finding information can become a cumbersome task, and how can we utilize AI to make that a more pleasant and interactive experience? Well, really does come down to how that site is configured, and I'll let Raylene jump in here as well if you've got any other topics around the information management.
Yeah. So if you've got a specific site, for example, and document libraries, that can certainly be extended as well through some Copilot agent and grounding it within that location. However, Copilot can actually assist in setting up and configuring advanced search functionalities across that site and library. You can also leverage metadata and tagging, because the more your documents are organised and have appropriate metadata and tags, Copilot can actually help and sort of improve that categorization as well. So that can be leveraged. Copilot can guide in creating things like custom views and filters. So it can actually be leveraged to help users to understand how to create custom views and make it easier for themselves to be able to find that information. And then there's also the notion of sort of automating some workflows around that to manage some documents and approvals, or even notifications, or reducing some manual effort around, you know, storing and categorizing and arranging that information in a better way so as to make it more discoverable.
Right.
So,
Question.
sorry, Luca, I'm just going to jump in. I can see the chat. And so Stephen Tracy's asked the question, how to enable Copilot to summarize Outlook email? And Raylene, I think you've covered some of that. Is there anything that you wanted to add?
Sorry, was it how do I enable it, or?
Yeah, to summarize.
Copilot to summarize Outlook emails.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I mean, the best approach is from within Outlook. So if you have Copilot within Outlook on the toolbar, is to utilize the Copilot from within the Outlook application. And essentially, one of my key tips around using any AI, whether it's ChatGPT or Copilot, is to talk to it like it's a human. So you simply just need to ask the Copilot, can you please summarize this email if you have it open? Or can you please summarize the emails that I have received from Luca today? And it will go and summarize those emails and provide that response back to you. So AI does recognize manners, and it does grow, I guess, well, I call it grow, from talking to it in a way where it's a human. So I think, like, yeah, in terms of anything that you want to ask the Copilot to do, just think about how you would ask your colleague and write that in the prompt, and you'll see what the response from Copilot is.
And I think just further to that as well. So this is where looking at Copilot spread across multiple apps, like Raylene's mentioned, it is in Outlook, but you've also got the Copilot chat. So if you've used that application, you've got your two modes there, the web and your work tab. And essentially in your work tab, this is where Copilot is, when we say grounded in business data, what we mean by that is Copilot has access to what you have access to as a user, sitting at your computer, accessing your Office 365, Dynamics 365 applications. So if you go into that chat interface and say, can you please summarize, like Raylene's mentioned, the emails from this morning, which are the highest priority based on, you know, the title or the priority flag, that's where it will give you that summary. But then you can also move out of that app-centric point of view. So rather than just saying, we're going to stay in Outlook, say, okay, I've received an email from Raylene about a Copilot webinar. What other information do I need to know about that? And then it's going to go to PowerPoint, it's going to go to Excel, it's going to go into the Power Platform. And then in that one interface, give you everything that you need to know. So this is where, when we're not just looking in one app anymore, this is where, like, I personally find Copilot incredibly beneficial, is that it can trawl multiple sources and then give you the information that you need. And this answers the question around point number 4. How can Copilot help us make informed decisions? Well, informed decisions need to be made off data, right? So we don't want to have to, because it takes time to go into multiple systems and pull that data out and collate it. That's where AI is incredibly powerful at that task. If you needed to go in and pull information out, summarize your emails, even if you describe an email, like I've used this so many times, so I know this person emailed me about this topic, Outlook search hasn't found it, and in 2 seconds, Copilot's brought it up. That's where you're making informed decisions, because you're getting the data that you need. You're getting the data you already have access to through the Copilot security lens. And then if you do need to get more information from that, well, then you still got the large language model. You can still ask it questions. You can still get it to search the web. So you get the best of both worlds with Copilot.
Yeah, I was just going to say, and you can also leverage Copilot to actually do some analysis and visualization. So for example, if you've got a large spreadsheet and you're doing some analysis, you can actually leverage Copilot to help you with some formula, to help you write the formula so that you can display the information differently. It can also help you with creating graphs and visualizations. which all sort of, leans towards being able to make better decisions as well.
Luca, I've got another question here off the chat from Maureen. Maureen, I'll try and paraphrase this a little bit, but they've got a question about the note-taking feature for Copilot in Teams. The understanding is that it allows you to transcribe it, but it means that you won't be able to do this for meetings that aren't in your organisation. So it does, i.e. doesn't own it. As a consultancy business attending a lot of meetings, most of which we are not the meeting organiser, I'm interested to see whether this is something Copilot can work around, or is there a better alternative in the market to do this for all our meetings?
I'd rather take it offline, because I have faced this as well and have looked at ways to do that. I mean, there's the notion of getting the transcript from the meeting organizer, but understand that that's not always possible. But what we could do is provide something back to Maureen via email, just with some ideas or some, tips around how she might be able to do that. I can't answer it directly, because you are right, Maureen. It is a struggle when the meetings are organised by somebody else to be able to use the Copilot during that meeting to get the transcript and the recap, etc.
It's a good point there. So you can see where the security architecture, keeping it limited to your tenant, well, that's where that limitation is coming into place. But then you've also got the other side, and the rationale behind that is it's the security. You're keeping that information in your tenant. Now, of course, we want to use AI ethically. There is huge amounts of information now about the ethics of AI. But what we could look at doing here as well is, if there are ways to get access to that information, whether it's a recording, even without a transcript, you can then use AI to go and pull the information out of the recording or even out of the audio. So there are multiple ways that we can tackle that task. And this comes into the part that I think was called Optimize and Extend during Raylene's chat there, is that this is where you've got your out-of-the-box Copilot functionality, but then for those unique use cases, this is where we may want to look at a Copilot Studio. We may want to extend Copilot to meet that exact need. And then once we get even past that, well, then we can start getting into the Azure AI territory. Now, some people ask, what's the difference between Azure AI and Copilot AI? I think Copilot is your low code, your maker style, where Azure AI is you need your data analyst to really come in and tune that data. You can tune the temperature of the large language model. You have a lot more flexibility. So understanding the use case really can help us determine what's the best scenario to meet that need.
Thanks, Raylene. Listen, I've got another one from Chris. I think he's looking for an adoption question. The rollout of Copilot, should we allow free flight trial for early adopters without proper outcomes? How can we control it and drive more value out of it?
There are some people or MVPs as well that are talking very much around having that sort of free flyer trial being extremely beneficial in terms of perhaps not focusing, as I mentioned, around having those sort of use case scenarios. What I would say is yes, definitely, because that adoption, what those users do, if we draw back to what I was talking about through the monitoring and the analysis, what those free flyers actually do with the AI and getting the data from them is going to inform that broader rollout strategy. It's the most valuable information that you can have around driving value within the business, is what people are actually doing rather than hypothesizing what might happen. So my advice would be is most definitely yes. Think about the baseline protection, the pre sort of, having the audit log turned on and a couple of other things so that you can make sure that you get that data. And then I would say leverage that data to inform the next steps.
Thanks. We've got a few more chats in there, but Luca and Raylene, I might just do a time check as to how we're tracking.
We've got 4 minutes.
4 minutes to go. So maybe a couple more, and then we might have to wrap it up. And we can get back to you offline as well with the questions. So keep adding them in. If we can't address them here, we'll put a response together and can get that to you.
And look, I think Michael's jumping in and answering some questions for us as well. He's put something there to address Stephen's query as well. And he's also given an example of how he uses Copilot to just get started during the course of the day. Okay, and Karina's come back with any ideas on what's the future of data analysis using Copilot, i.e. for Power BI and for SQL databases?
Yeah, look, definitely AI can be used for the analysis of whether it's Power BI, Excel, SQL databases, even your Dataverse applications. You'll see a lot of investment from Microsoft in particular about native data and analysis using Copilot. So whether it's in a Dynamics app and you can, interact through the large language model to get data back and get it to not make decisions, but give you informed decisions based on your data. There is a huge push into that data analytics approach. I think we still need to be mindful of where AI is in its current adoption phase. So what you'd want to really understand is, how is your data structured? What are some of the key insights that you do want to get out of that data? And in some cases, AI may be the best solution for that information. In other cases, a Power BI report may be the right approach there. But really what we want to understand, especially with data analytics, is what's the output? What's your data source as well? And then we'd be able to determine what the best approach is there. And just with AI in, let's say, your Dataverse, Excel, SQL, it will give summarized information. It can even do your visualization. But anything that's more standardized, you would want to build out a more standardized approach, which could be an agent built in Copilot Studio, for example. So that's where you can build an agent to run those data analytics and give you the results that you're really looking for there. Right.
Thanks, Luca. I think we'd better, guys, it's 1:59.
We are approaching time.
Yep.
All right, perfect. Again, I just want to say thank you all for attending today.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been great to talk Copilot, talk about some of the things that we're seeing from the market. We love talking about this. So if you want another chat, reach out. We are running a complimentary engagement at the moment, so we will come in and we will understand how AI, but Copilot in particular, can add value to your business and maybe demystify it a little bit there. There's still a lot of questions around what the actual value for AI can be. So let's run through and run that event together. So you can scan the QR code, or we will send this through. And I might just pass over to Rod, our state manager in WA, to give a bit of a taste for another bigger event we've got coming up.
Thanks very much, Luca. I think a lot of you probably would have been aware of the fact that we're running an event in April in Perth. So we have been inundated with people responding to that event, so much so that we've exceeded the capacity of our current venue. So please register. We've got a waiting list going on, and we're currently having conversations with the venue organisers to see if we can extend that. So once again, register. We'll try and get you, you'll get on the waiting list, and we'll get back to you quite quickly around that, and you'll get to meet Luca and Raylene face to face. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I might just hand back to you, Luca.
Perfect. Thank you, Rod, and we will leave it there. I hope everyone has a fantastic afternoon, and enjoy the rest of your week.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.